Hi everybody, welcome back. We're going back to the moon today, and we'll be using that tool that many of us have become familiar with, the Worldwide Telescope. And the Worldwide Telescope isn't just a telescope, it's a virtual telescope that uses images that were taken by satellite from NASA, of course, and then stitched onto a globe. And so we use it. It looks much like, it works just like Google Earth. And you can rotate the globe and then zoom in. And this is a tool that we need to get everybody to use because it's not going to be around forever, I guarantee it. So far in the few years that I've been doing this type of work, I've had, I don't know the number exactly, maybe 15 pictures were taken down off of the archives or altered and never to be seen again like what we've seen. So this could happen to the telescope. I think it likely will. So we need to get up there and take screenshots and look. So we're in the crater again, as I said, and these craters, every one of them has something in it. And much of the time they have these really interesting patterns on the floor of the crater. They're typically very hard to figure out if you can figure them out at all. And they're varied. There's so many different patterns that they use. It's really difficult to understand, what the difference could be from one pattern to the next. Other than just, looking at it, we know it's different. But why the patterns? Why do they have these patterns? And I think I can tell you why. Because these people are alien, folks. Okay. We've seen a lot of places on this channel, and we've seen a lot of really strange constructions and configurations. Nothing has been as strange as what we've seen here on the moon, thanks to the Worldwide Telescope. Now look at this sort of a checkerboard pattern. Isn't that just, it's really mesmerizing to the eyes. And it doesn't help, too, when we have, stark white buildings with stark black shadows or whatever. So the difference between them is really something. So now, if you take a close look, I've kind of taken a look at this pattern, and if you follow this line, you'll see that it starts with a row of low buildings, then taller buildings, and taller, and that's what we have here. This is how this pattern is laid out. These tall white buildings are just part of the pattern. And all of the white dots that you see are the rooftops of the buildings, and the black dots that you're seeing in the middle is the shadow in between the buildings. So we've got a ton of buildings here, and I think they're all cylindrical. Okay, all of the buildings in this area, in this pattern area, I'm pretty sure are all cylindrical. And there's other buildings around too that also are cylindrical. And while cylindrical is cool, it's nice to see something different. It's not all that crazy because, right here in the Pacific Northwest we have, dozens of buildings that are cylindrical. So it's not that unusual to have a cylindrical building, but it's nice to see something different, that's for sure. And right here in the center of the screen, you have the tallest cylindrical building. And by the way, we've seen cylindrical buildings before on Mars, and I think only on Mars. I don't think I've seen them other places. So now we have two, Mars and the moon. And take a look at that. One right dead center, and there's some going up off to the right. And right there in that pattern, right in the middle of the pattern coming down from the top, it looks like there's a cylindrical building that's actually larger than all the rest that are coming up from the middle of those rows of buildings that create the pattern. And those are very, very large cylindrical buildings too, by the way. If you look at everything else all around, these are the largest by far. Another thing that you'll see is in many of these buildings, you'll see the black opening or the black hole that we assume is an opening, and or that I assume is an opening. I think it's the parking garage, personally, but you know, I don't think it's a window. It would be only one window in the whole place, you know. So some of these buildings have many multiple openings too, which is interesting. Maybe those are the actual parking garage. I don't know. But this is such a cool place, and it is so different than all of the rest of the solar system. These people are unique unto themselves, I'm quite sure. I don't know who these people are. You know, previously I thought that people from Mars, and this is based on some pictures that I have, people from Mars and Venus and all the other places are all the same. The buildings are all the same. I just assumed they were people just like us. But I can't assume that on the moon because it is so very different. Here's a whole bunch more of that pattern, and each one of those vertical white buildings are cylindrical, and they are mixed in. And then the smaller buildings that are not in the pattern are a little bit hard to make out. But throughout this pattern, it's the same as what we saw before. They are low buildings that lead up to taller buildings that lead up to taller buildings. And then they do many buildings all the same height, which creates that pattern. It's just so interesting. And one thing that's true here on the moon, that's true everywhere else, is population density. These geometrically shaped, densely packed buildings create just an intense population. And I was going to call this video the maze makers of the moon, but I didn't. But these incredible maze patterns are just so interesting. And you can tell by looking in, if you look into the picture, look into the dark areas here, or look at one line and just follow that one line and see where it goes and grab another line and go on that one. These are just really intricate patterns. And each one of these white lines that we see, and if you might notice, they have what look like dots on them. And these dots, because of the resolution, it's not that good. But these are what appear to be buildings, but they're made up of small buildings. And this has been a repeated theme in different kinds of structures that we've seen on the moon so far. Except for the tall cylindrical buildings, no building at first glance it's a regular large building, but then when you look more closely, it's made up of individual segments of building or buildings. Very interesting, and you know, it's impossible to know why they build it like that, along with everything else. And the biggest impossibility that I can think of is for us to figure out how the hell all this is on the moon and we can't see it, or we don't know about it. How can that be? Again, with the thousands and thousands of telescopes and all of the technology and the stupid people in stupid cars driving by, we don't see what's up there. And it's the whole entire moon, folks. It's not just in the craters. Now, with the Worldwide Telescope, they didn't obfuscate the craters. I don't know why. But if you look at the white areas, what little bit of that I show, it is completely and utterly obfuscated. So you're not going to be seeing anything in that white area at all. But we see a lot in the craters. And we need to get all of the researchers on these craters so we can get this out, right? It's all part of trying to get disclosure. And if enough people start putting up pictures like these, maybe we could spur something. But to tell you the truth, it's just too shocking. It's too unbelievable. And people probably really are not ready for this kind of population hanging out over our heads, right? There's a whole lot of people up there. It's one thing to talk about out in the solar system, which is not really the narrative at all. The narrative is always out in the, out in the cosmos. What's out there, how many light years away. By the way, in this crater, there were actually 2 of these concentric lines. And we don't know what they are. They could be transportation. They could be used for conveyance of things. But every time I look at these lines closely, they're all different. And, sometimes it's just a dark line. Other times there's what looks like buildings in there. So, I don't know really what they are, but they do circle the globe, and they go from pole to pole. And I don't know the exact number, but I would guess that there is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 of those lines that circle the globe. And we can only see them in the dark craters. This is something I've mentioned before that I wanted to do a video on. It's just too difficult and too time-consuming to do. Maybe someday, But in the meantime, I've got plenty other pictures like these that show us, again, mass civilization and very, very unusual structuring, unusual on the layout. That kind of reminds me of Mars. You see these incredible dunes on Mars, but close up, it's just made of buildings, just normal buildings, kind of like paintings, right? You see a picture that is painted using the pointillism method. Have you ever heard of that? It's made by dots, and then and once it's all filled in, you look at it, you got a big, beautiful picture. If you look very, very, very closely, it's all done with dots. And this is what we have. We have either these big dunes on Mars made of buildings, or this real unusual rows and lines of structures on the moon. There's so much unusual stuff here. I was always feeling comfortable that we have. I assumed that the other people in the solar system were like us. That brought me a certain amount of comfort, but not knowing who's on the moon, and it's so different. I don't know, it's very makes me nervous, and I'm kind of seasoned at doing this, and people who weren't expecting this kind of thing, it would scare them. I think it would scare them to know that there's this many people on the moon. I never used to say that in regards to just finding life out there somewhere, but that's out there. The moon is right here. I mean, it's, I look at the moon every time I go outside at night and during the day sometimes, and I always wonder, are they looking back? Who's there? What happens on the moon? What are they doing up there? Again, like everywhere else in the solar system, we know they procreate. This moon is utterly covered with buildings, top to bottom. And For the first time in my life, only a couple months ago, I came to the realization that we've never landed on the moon. There's no place to land. And now they're talking about crashing a rocket or crashing something on the back side of the moon for science purposes. Well, sure, they would crash it on the backside where we can't see it. There's no room over there either. So it's a lot of people living there. We don't know who they are or what they are. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you soon.